with healthy and positive behaviors and patterns. I made a couple of relationship decisions that ended really badly for me, causing me to have a lot of self-identity issues and cling on to people that I probably shouldn't have because they didn't align with my morals and values. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, but if you want to learn more about that, you can go to my Patreon and learn more about me. Today is about you, and we're going to talk about the abandonment issue. So, first up, the agenda. Family feuds and scientific. One of the spiritual meanings of Vulture is that it is a signal of rebirth, but we'll get more into the scientific meaning later on in this video. The ripple effect. How does family feuds and vultures affect our daily lives? And how can we be more self-aware in recognizing how this is affecting our daily lives? Alrighty, now we're going to move on to family feuds. Family feuds, mom and dad. What does your relationship with your mom and dad look like? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Are you maybe a little bit too attached? Maybe you haven't talked to them in years. These affect your psyche, your self-confidence, your self-esteem in many different ways. Personally, for me, I've gone through some self-esteem up and downs over the last couple of years. I have a really big abandonment issue with my dad. My dad lived 10 minutes away from me my entire life. And unfortunately, he decided not to be a part of my life. And there's his reasonings, and so many did feel small of love throughout our entire society. Moving on, brothers and sisters. What does your relationship with your brothers and sisters look like? Are y'all thicker than thieves? Do you share? Do you care for one another? Do you check in often? Or are you estranged? Do they live in different places? Is it hard to get in contact? And maybe they're a big difference in age, and there are a lot of things that you guys just don't align on. And that leads me to the extended family. The extended family has everything to do with your aunts, your uncles, your grandma, your grandpa. What do those relationships look like? Are you checking in with them? Are you giving them updates? And do they check in with you? Are they updating you? Now, one thing that I learned early on in my career is that vulnerability is key in these relationships. 9 times out of 10, when you give someone vulnerability, they're going to match you. The hard part is you have to have a good understanding of your own feelings and emotions and where the intention and what you're saying, where it comes from. Now, in my relationships, I'm having a billion examples flood my mind right now. I'll start with my mom. Since we've already talked about my dad, my mom is a constant. She's always there. She's played my savior more times than I can count. And this has given me a little bit of a codependent relationship with my mother. We have learned, now that I'm 27 years old, that some boundaries need to be put in place in order for us to have a healthy relationship and also for us to understand one another. While I love my mother and she's great at what she does, there has been a little bit of a training situation. And a lot of parents think that they need to train their children so that they won't get taken advantage of in society. But the problem with that is when you don't take time to understand your child, their patterns of behaviors, their needs, their wants, and especially because there was a lot of fear that I was going to end up like my father, who was codependent on his family, there was a lot of that fear within that relationship as well, which I'm just now beginning to understand as a fully grown adult. Some of the things that I'm doing in order to correct those behaviors, I say no when something makes me uncomfortable, or I say, why do you want me to do that? I get inquisitive, I get curious, and I start to ask questions so that I can understand myself and my mother better. Another thing that I've done in order to connect with my father, I realized that he has a lot of mental health issues. He was he was raised with a lot of expectation, and therefore later on in life he turned to drugs to get that high. Now, because of those drugs and a motorcycle accident, he actually had to relearn all his cognitive abilities and does not have a true sense of independence that is not codependent on my grandparents. With that being said, connecting with him has allowed me to be more connected to myself, because for so long I've only known my mom's side of the family and my mother, and I had another lack of understanding of myself because I couldn't understand why I couldn't fit in with these people or why I wasn't like them. And it was because there was a lack of that fatherly presence in my life. And when I say fatherly presence, I mean just genuinely understanding my genetics, knowing that I do have some bipolar tendencies, that if I get hot or overwhelmed or frustrated with something, I have a tendency to pop off. And I've always judged myself very heavily for that, and I have sent myself into this guilt and shame cycle because I have not had an understanding of my father's genetics and my family's genetics. With there being so much in mental illness on my dad's side of the family, it has taken a lot of corrective behavior to understand how to operate in society. Because for me to go out and about and to be out in the sun or to be hanging out with people, I get much more tired easily. In addition, I'm also an almost 6-foot woman, so there's a lot more to carry here. So what does that mean for me? That means that I need to be choosing my friend family very strategically. I also want to be friends with people that have good understanding of mental illness, or that are tall or bigger like me, that also have the same kind of functioning power out in public. When it comes to your brothers and sisters, what is the relationship that you have with them? When you were growing up, did you have a very sharing care? Were you more susceptible to let them borrow something, or did you get mad and have boundaries and say, hey, you can't take that unless you ask? Now, with my sister, she's 7 years older, growing up, we had a great little relationship. She bullied me a little bit too, but most older sisters do. And I learned from her how to be sweet and caring and a little bit softer, which is where I would like to think that I got my more sisterly side, that I'm able to open up and offer, but also have strong boundaries and saying, hey, I'm totally fine if you use this, but these are the things that I would like for you to do in exchange for that. Right now, my friend is utilizing my car so that they can get back and forth from work. The reason that's okay is because there's a lot of things that I do that are work from home, like creating this little video. And I allow them to do that because, one, there are some things that I need to get fixed on my car that are more paperwork things, and that'll keep me sat here at home to make sure that those things get done. In addition to that, I told her, hey, another boundary of mine is make sure that the car is filled up with gas. If I get in it and I need to go somewhere and it's on empty, I'm going to be pretty upset. Those are some of the boundaries that I've set in a sisterly relationship. Now, when it comes to brothers, I've never had a brother before, so this is something that I've had to learn through experience out in the real world. And one of the things that's really important to me is that a brother that can hold me and not be attracted to me. A friend that understands that there might be some times that I just need a little bit of comfort and to be held by a man. Because there is a different type of reassurance when it comes to manly love and feminine love. A hug can do so much for someone. It can inspire them, it can give them confidence, and it can allow them to grow into places that potential can only dictate. Those brother and sister relationships are so important. And it's important to have healthy boundaries and being able to speak your mind, and also being open-hearted enough to share and care. Then we get to the extended family. Now, the extended family is a little bit harder. These are probably the people that you don't talk to as much, maybe once a week, once a month, once a quarter, once a year. And those relationships are really important to pay attention to because they dictate how you treat old friends and people that maybe aren't in your life conveniently right now, but you still want to honor and respect in the background. How do you treat those relationships? Do you ignore them? Are they out of sight, out of mind? With somebody with a little bit of ADHD, a lot of things can be out of sight, out of mind for me. And one of the things that I do is I use my pinned messages. I put them up at the top, and I make sure that whether it's once a week, once a month, once a quarter, once a year, however they want to dictate that relationship and however I feel is comfortable for that relationship, I make sure to check in with them. For me, there are people that I hold really, really closely, and I want to talk to them once a week. Now, I understand that there is a certain type of relationship that might become more important in somebody's life, and therefore you get less and less time, especially when you don't make an intention to meet up with those people and connect with those people. Now, those extended relationships, as long as you're both in agreement on how that extended relationship should work, then perfect. With my Uncle Mike, I love him to death. That guy is always working though. So only times we really get to connect is when he needs help with work, or Thanksgiving when we have our family reunion. Now, even if I wanted to change that relationship, he would need to be in agreement with it. Me reaching out and saying, hey, I want to come visit you and Grandma once a month. He might say, hey, that's too soon, that's too often. Can we do it once a quarter? I would love to see you, I would love to have you. And that doesn't speak illy of me. That means that's what he needs and that's what his boundaries are, which is good for me because it helps me adjust and readjust. And in all these relationships, the number one factor is transparency and trust. Because a lot of abandonment issues come from the fact that there is a lack of trust, which you need trust in order to build faith. And faith is the accumulation of acts that you say you're going to do, that you actually do over and over and over again. It's your pattern of behavior. I can have faith in you if your pattern of behavior shows me that you're willing to do life with me, that you're willing to do work with me, that you're dealing. And if you're dealing with something, you're honest with me, you communicate, hey, it's not you, this is just something that I'm dealing with in the background. And I think it's really important that we all have honesty with each other, because what makes a fake friend or makes a fake relationship is when you try to act like everything is fine, but in reality, in the background, there are things going on that you're not communicating. And there's a certain level that you share with, and this has taken a lot of practice on my part, especially with the internet, right? There are some things that I'm willing to share, like currently what's going on in my life. That's what my Patreon subscribers get, because they pay for it. And they get to be closer to me. They get to understand me more because they pay to have that certain level of transparency with me. Now, when it comes to my family, I have a very open and honest and transparent relationship with my mother because we help each other. And that's what really good families do, is that when one family member is in struggle, the other one's stretched to help them. And then when that person is back in the fold and somebody else is going through something, they stretch to help them. And having a family like that keeps you in check with reality of, hey, we love you and we know that you've been going through a hard time, but it's back. It's time to come back. You can't stay depressed. You can't stay sad. And yes, there is a certain amount of time that is allowed and okay for that to happen. And you're also more than allowed to set a boundary and say, hey, I'm not over this. It has really hurt me. I haven't talked about this enough. Could I talk to you about it? I am trying. Or maybe journal more. And that is what's really, really important. And the way this affects our abandonment issues is that if you have any of these familial pieces missing, I used to have a roommate. I loved her to death. I shared things with her that I haven't shared with anybody else. And to me, she was family. She was somebody that I cared about a lot. And I would have done anything for this girl. Looking back now, she was a vulture, which we'll get into in a little bit. I was going through a really hard time. I had just gotten a new place. I had mentioned that I had another room available. I charged cheaply for it, and I let her live with me because she asked. She needed help. She was getting out of a bad relationship. Pulls at my heartstrings. I'm a big family girl. My ultimate desire in life is to have a group of my friends that live close together by the end of my life. And the thing that ruined that relationship was, from the jump, I wasn't honest about how she was kind of walking all over me and stepping on me in order to make herself feel better. And it would have been okay if it would have been a month to 3 months of sadness and getting over it. And I feel like she did. She really rose from it. She got better. And I still to this day wonder what happened towards the end, because after about 2 years of living together, there was a moment of separation. And I constantly caused myself to wonder, was there an action or behavior that was out of pattern for me? And it was probably the fact that my company where it was at, I had to let go of a lot of people, and she was one of those people. And so I had stopped taking care of her. I wasn't able to take care of her anymore. And so I needed at that point to be taken care of, because something that I really loved had ended very badly. And I needed a caretaker, someone to watch over me as I went through that period. Instead, she was scared, twisted off, and actually made that so much worse, because not only had I lost something that I really loved in my business, I'd also lost a really good friend, which sent me into this self-identity crisis, because she had said a lot of things that just weren't in alignment with my character. But I had had another friend from the previous roommate relationship that had done something very similar, except she had just ghosted. And in both situations, there wasn't clear communication on why the relationship was ending, why the feelings were the way that they were, and there was a sense of abandonment. I, to this day, could not tell you what it was on my actions or what I said or did that made them feel abandoned, but I can tell you right now that they did feel abandoned, because they began to pull away. They gave me less time, they gave me less communication. And if there's one thing that I know, is that it's really important in a relationship to have open communication about how you're feeling, transparency, and trust. Now, move forward to my last relationship. Towards the last 3 to 6 months, there was space. And I began to feel abandoned. I began to feel like my partner didn't care about me, and that even though they were trying their hardest to communicate to me, they weren't putting action behind the words. One thing that I would have really loved from my perspective, so I've gone through 3 of these situations now over the last 6 years, which causes you to question your validity as a person, which is why I ended up going to therapy and getting my master's. What I can say now is that I'm grateful for the experiences, because in the first one, I was pretty much ghosted. In the second one, I was projected on and belittled. In the last one, I decided to leave. And the reason for that being was that I realized that all you can do when you're in those relationships is recognize, has this person become a vulture? Now, vultures, what do? Vultures circle and wait. They wait for you and they wait for you until you're almost dead or you're dead. And at the end of my first relationship with my previous, taking it real back, when I was living in Rowlett, I was in a really bad situation with my roommates, to the point where one of the roommates had kittens, and she used my blanket to give birth to the kittens. And to me, that was just a no-go. And I expressed that, and she was like, oh, well, I washed it. At that point, I don't want the blanket. I want you to buy me a new blanket. But I knew that was a no-go because she didn't have the money to do it. And I was in a place where I didn't have the money to buy myself a new blanket. And so there was a stressor on that relationship. And the other person that was living with us at the time had gotten into a new relationship who had usually played the solid one, the peacekeeper, and just wasn't willing to do that anymore. And she also moved out. Moral of the story is as I moved on from that relationship, I was dealing with the death of relationships. I decided to move in with somebody who I wasn't 100% sold on that they were my people, that they were my person. But because I was desperate, because I was in a dying phase, I allowed myself to cling to a vulture. Now, this vulture seemed pretty, seemed nice, said all the right things, but in reality, they were just circling and waiting. And they were picking apart the remains. In my relationship with this person, I went over and above to try to make sure that everything worked, that we were good, that we were playing the roles of mom and dad within our home. I treated her like a sister, and she treated me like a sister. Now, the problem came in when I decided to quit the job that we were both working at. She had asked me to start a company with her, and I said no. And from there, the relationship definitely deteriorated to the point where she ended up finding somebody else and starting a company with them, and so on and so forth. There were a lot of bad things that happened towards the end of that relationship that I wish I would have just left alone, instead of trying so hard to communicate and trying so hard, because that person didn't match my energy. They were a vulture. They didn't actually want to have a relationship with me. They just wanted to use me for the abilities that I had or that I could give them. They wanted to pick apart. They wanted to copy like an artist, however you want to say it. Finally, we have the rebirth and rebuilding yourself. Even when you get picked apart by a vulture, scientifically, it's got to come out one end or the other. And that gets put back into the earth. And that will be used as nutrients to help something new grow. So even if you've been picked apart by a vulture, or even if you've gone through something in your life that you just feel like you're dying from, stand strong. Lean on your family. Ask them to stretch a little bit for you. Go back to that place of renewal and rebirth. If you're in a pack, then the pack should protect you. Now, when you're rebirthing and you're rebuilding yourself and you're regrowing whatever it was that you already had, the nutrients that you have inside of you that allow for new growth, you're broken down to your very base form. What do you do with that? How do you grow from there? And what does that do for the rest of your community? This is what we call the ripple effect. You need to start paying attention to who your mentors are. If you're going back out in society, you're separating from your family again, you're like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to rebirth. I'm going to grow. I'm going to be a person again. Who are your mentors? Who are those mom and dad figures in your life that are going to be a part of your pack and protect you as you're moving on? Right now in my life, I would like to say that I have two really great mentors. I am patiently waiting for one to come back into my life, and so I'm kind of in this limbo phase. I had a great mentor when I first got out of college. Her name was Quincy Preston for Dallas Innovates. She very much treated me like a mother and gave me the recognition and the confidence that I needed to continue on with my career. Now, the next father figure that I had was not the greatest. In my career, I worked with a man that ended up dating one of the other women in our office, lied about it, and in many ways, I learned how to not operate because of his father figure role in my life. So who are your mentors? What are they teaching you, and how is it valuable for this part of your life? And I do think that as you grow, you should be getting new mentors. There are many people in my life that I consider mentors, but now they're a part of the extended family. They move from mom and dad to brother and sister to uncle to cousin, and that is the cycle. Because as you continue to grow and you continue to elevate, either those mentors are going to grow with you and you're going to give them opportunities and they're going to take them and they're going to praise you for your growth and they're going to start to settle into their retirement. Or they're going to be jealous, they're going to be scared, they're going to wish that you would stay small. And those kinds of mentors aren't the ones that we need. Those are the kind of mentors that can become extended family. Who are you walking life with? These are your brothers and sisters, the people that you do more daily life with, the people that you care about, that care about you, that if you need a car ride or if you need to get picked up from, I said that twice, if you need a car ride or if your tire goes flat, who's the person that you call when you're on the side of the road? These are your brothers and sisters. Now, in part of the rebirth phase of life, you really want to pay attention to what are my boundaries with these people? How often do I talk to them? How often are we connecting and giving each other updates? Right now, my sister is really busy in life, and so I've recognized that the woman that I consider my sister in life right now, my extended, outside of my actual family, my friend, I've realized that she's also really busy right now. And so there's this really interesting little energy going on that I'm not as connected as I would like to be with my sister, but I know it's just a season. And as my friend and sister are busy going through their season, they're working on growing themselves, putting themselves in a position where they can be settled so that they can bring back wisdom and knowledge to our relationship, because that's what a good family does. They go out and they bring back in wisdom. I have to have grace, and I have to have trust, and I have to have faith that these sisters of mine, these friends of mine, are going to come back to me. Like I've mentioned before, I don't have a brother, so these brotherly relationships are pretty new to me. Now I'm trying to focus on who are really going to be my brothers. Who are the people that I'm going to be arm in arm with, and how do I treat them, and how should I be treated? Now, there is a certain level of respect that I do demand, especially when it comes from men, because I have been so hurt by men, and I just need a little bit more of a softer, sweeter side when it comes to men. And if you're not willing or vulnerable to offer that to me in our relationship, then most likely it's not going to work. If you're a macho man, you're really just not my type. I need the softies. And I need direct and honest communication. And because I am a softie and I respect and expect men that are also softies, I have to recognize that there is a sweet and kind way to talk to them. Now, the problem lies in I don't have a lot of experience with this, and so I am doing it the best way that I know how. I'm being direct and honest and sweet and kind, but at the same time, firm. What we like to say here in Texas is friendly, but firm. Moving on to that extended family, which we're going to talk about. How often do you check in and update? We mentioned this a little bit before, but what I really want to talk about is managing, and really it's managing those relationships. How often can you check in with someone that it is a good standing relationship? I like to bring up roses and cactuses. So cactuses, they don't need a lot of watering, they're good on their own, they can withstand the heat. Roses need a lot of love and care and guidance, and you really need to make sure to check in on your roses every single day. With me, I am definitely a rose. I've always been a rose, even when I try to pretend to be a cactus. For me, being a rose means that I want deep, close, personal relationships with the people in my life. And so I have always had a tendency to call in once a week or once a month. And checking in once a quarter is not really my style. The reason being is that I want to make sure that you and I are talking about all the exciting things that are happening in our lives and really just celebrating each other. I think it's so important to be close with the people that you've grown up with so that they can truly understand the depth and the pride of what you're accomplishing, knowing that this is something that I or they have wanted since a young age, and growing and learning that, wow, they really accomplished that. One of my favorite compliments I've ever gotten is from my friend. His name is Nick Ingman. He's a great man. He has a great business, tech business out in New York. If you want to use him, I'll put him down below. With that being said, one time he told me, he was like, the one thing I love about you is that you always do what you say you're going to do. You said you were going to go to India, you did it. You said you were going to go to Spain, you did it. Now I got to make it back out to New York to hang out with my friend because he's so busy running his business. He's got a girlfriend now. He's got a great group of friends out there, which makes me so happy because I know that's something that he's always wanted. He's always wanted to be connected to a community like that. With that being said, I also have to be understanding that he doesn't have as much time for me anymore. And so if I really want to be friends with my friend, I'm going to have to make some money and make it out to New York. That gets us through all of our topics today and our conclusion. Be direct about your feelings and communication. You're going to be very, very disappointed at the end of a relationship when it ends because there were so many things left unsaid, and there's so many miscommunications that ended the relationship. I recognize I've allowed myself to be bullied, and I'm a little bit too much of a people pleaser, that I haven't really expressed who I am inside of relationships and what I demand or what I need. When it comes to vultures, vultures only become vultures if you let them. They circle, they wait, you die. They can either help you ride on the wings, or they can pick you apart. You get to choose. Do you fight back, or do you allow them to use you? You can't avoid human nature or control. A lot of these people that I'm talking about that I've dealt with that have become vultures in my life became vultures because when I was honest, or I did have moments of directness with them, they avoided the issue, they ignored it, they weren't honest about their own feelings and communication back. Instead, they allowed themselves to be overridden by feelings maybe they had about themselves, and they projected those onto me. Or they just shut down completely and wouldn't talk to me at all. And in that circumstance, there's nothing that I can do. I can't control them, and unfortunately, we can't stay friends if we can't have an open and honest communication in our relationship. It's one of the first and qualifying factors of my friendships and relationships, especially my familial relationships. And as I continue to grow and deepen my familial relationships, the ripple effect is that my relationships with my friends grow deeper as well. You can't predict the ending. I know I wrote that you can't predict the ending. And I think the hard part about this is, one of the things that I've really learned in my relationships is that some people will just reflect you without understanding themselves. And if you run into those people and they're not honest about how they feel as well, then most likely the relationship is going to end badly. But if you run into people that you're honest with, you directly communicate with, and you're vulnerable with, and they're honest and authentic and self-actualized, then you're going to be able to connect with them. Those will be lifelong friends. Y'all, I want to say thank you so much for watching this video, for connecting with me today, listening. If you want to support me on my journey as I continue to be a therapist in training, and you like these videos, and you want to learn more about me personally, I highly suggest you join my Patreon. It is super cheap. I believe it's $10 a month for the first year, and you can go up from there. I also have a Nashville meet and greet coming up. If you are in Nashville and you want to meet me and you want to talk about your abandonment issues, or you want to talk about music, or you want to talk about your career, I'd be happy to meet with you and talk with you more. And I just want to say thanks. This has been a really enjoyable video for me, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Love you all.